The first thing I heard was the snap of my own bone. It echoed through the silent, frozen woods, a sickening crack that seemed to shake the very stars. Agony, white-hot and brilliant, shot up my leg from my ankle. I bit down on a scream, tasting copper as my teeth broke skin and crumpled against the rough bark of an ancient pine. The scent of my own blood, sharp, metallic, wrong, filled the air, a beacon in the darkness. Run, Ella, just keep running. But my body wouldn't listen. The forest around the Moonfall Pack territory was a labyrinth of shadows and treacherous ground, and I'd chosen the worst possible night to navigate it. The full moon hung above the canopy like a baleful eye, its silver light painting the world in stark, unforgiving relief. It was the reason I was out here. The reason I had to get away before the change took me, before the secret I'd kept for 18 years ripped itself free in front of everyone. A low, guttural growl vibrated through the earth, coming from the direction of the pack house. They'd noticed I was gone. The hunt had begun. My name is Ella. I am, or was, the Omega of the Moonfall Pack. The quiet one. The overlooked one. The one who flinched at loud noises and kept her eyes on the ground. For 3 years, since my parents died and Alpha Joseph took me in out of pity, that had been my role. To be invisible, to be nothing. Tonight, that ended. Another growl, closer this time. Twigs snapped under a heavy, purposeful weight. They weren't even in wolf form yet, and they were already gaining. Panic, cold and slick, coiled in my gut. I tried to push myself up, but my ruined ankle gave way with another jolt of nauseating pain. A whimper escaped me. Little lost lamb. The voice came from my left, smooth as dark velvet and just as chilling. I didn't need to turn my head to know who it was. Owen. Bader of Moonfall, Alpha Joseph's right hand, and my personal shadow of dread. He stepped into a patch of moonlight, his handsome face all sharp angles and cruel amusement. He was built like a warrior, broad-shouldered and lean, with eyes the color of a winter storm. "Did you really think you could run, Ella?" he tutted, taking a slow, predatory step closer. The scent of frost and pine needles clung to him. On a full moon, it's almost insulting. "Stay away from me, Owen," I breathed, my voice trembling despite my best effort to steady it. "Or what?" he chuckled, a dry, heartless sound. "You'll cry, you'll beg. I've seen you do both. It's getting old." He was within 10 feet now, his presence a physical pressure. "Joseph wants you back. He's disappointed. Says you have a duty to the pack tonight." A duty? Right. To be the ceremonial sacrifice to the moon, the weakling whose first shift would be a spectacle for the strong. To have my most vulnerable, terrifying moment turned into a pack lesson. See the Omega struggle. This is why we are strong. "I'm not going back," I said, the defiance sounding frail even to my own ears. Owen's smile vanished. "You don't have a choice." He lunged. Not to grab me, but to flank me, to herd me back toward the territory like the sheep he thought I was. I scrambled backward, my hands scraping over roots and frozen leaves, the pain in my ankle screaming in protest. The bond, that faint, psychic thread that connected every member of the pack, tugged at me. It was a gentle, insistent pull toward home, toward the Alpha's command. For years, I'd obeyed it without question. Tonight, I snarled and mentally shoved back. Owen actually staggered, a flicker of shock crossing his face. An Omega pushing back against a Beta, unheard of. The shock morphed into rage. "You little bitch," he spat, his eyes flashing with the wolf just beneath his skin. "I'll drag you back by your hair." That was my first mistake, pushing back. It revealed a strength I shouldn't have. It made him angry. His hand shot out, fingers like steel talons aiming for my arm. I braced for the impact. It never came. A blur of midnight and fury erupted from the trees to my right. It moved with a silence that was more terrifying than any roar. a shadow given form and deadly intent. It intercepted Owen's lunge with a force that sent the beta crashing into a thicket with a yelp of surprise and pain. And then he was just there. Standing between Owen and me, his back to me, was a man who made the very air still. He was taller than Owen, his frame wider with raw, coiled power that strained against a simple black t-shirt. The moonlight seemed to cling to him, to his dark, tousled hair. The scent that washed over me was nothing like the frosty, clean smell of my pack. This was smoke and amber, dark earth after a rain, and the sharp, wild tang of absolute authority. It slammed into my senses, bypassing all thought, all fear, speaking directly to something primal and dormant deep in my core. My breath hitched. My heart, which had been hammering with terror, did something entirely new. It stuttered, then settled into a deep, resonant rhythm that felt synchronized, as if it were trying to match the steady, powerful beat of his. Owen climbed to his feet, brushing dirt from his clothes, his face a mask of fury. "This is Moonfall territory, rogue, you're trespassing. The girl is pack property. Walk away." The stranger didn't move. His voice, when he spoke, was low, a rumble that I felt in my bones. "She doesn't smell like property." He half turned his head, just enough for me to see the stark, fierce line of his jaw. "She smells like fear." His gaze found mine over his shoulder. Time stopped. His eyes were the color of molten gold, burning with an inner fire. In them, I saw the wilderness, the hunt, the unyielding will of a king. And in that single, electric glance, I felt a pull so profound, so terrifyingly inevitable, that my injured ankle was forgotten. The bond, the real bond, not the feeble pack link, snapped into place between us with the force of a thunderclap. It was a cord of pure energy, tying my soul to his. It sang. It howled. Mate, the word echoed in the silent chamber of my mind, undeniable, irrevocable. "Vincent," Owen breathed, the anger in his voice now edged with a sliver of fear. "Alpha King." Alpha King. The rogue packs had a king. Rumors, whispers among the lower ranks, but no one truly believed. Vincent turned fully to face Owen, dismissing me, yet his presence remained a solid wall at my back. "You let your Omegas run injured into neutral ground, Beta. Your pack's carelessness is noted." "She's a defective," Owen spat, recovering his bravado. "A late bloomer, probably won't even survive her first shift. Joseph was doing her a kindness, letting her live with us. Now give her back." A kindness. The words were a familiar poison. I looked down at my trembling hands. Defective, that's what they all thought, what I'd started to believe. Vincent took a step toward Owen, just one. The temperature seemed to drop. "You are speaking of my mate." Silence, profound, absolute silence fell in the wake of those words. Even the wind seemed to die. Owen's face went pale, his stormy eyes widening in disbelief, then dawning, horrified comprehension. He looked from Vincent's imperious form to my crumpled, bloody self on the ground. And he laughed, a harsh, disbelieving bark. "Your mate, that! The Alpha King's fated mate is the Moonfall Omega reject." He shook his head, a cruel grin spreading. "The moon goddess has a sick sense of humor. She's nothing, less than nothing. You can have the broken little thing. It'll save us the trouble of putting her down after her shift kills her." Every word was a lash, confirming every silent fear I'd ever harbored. Shame, hot and acidic, burned my throat. I wanted to disappear into the pine needles. Vincent didn't react with more anger. His stillness became something infinitely more dangerous. The gold of his eyes seemed to brighten, to glow. "Run back to your Alpha, Beta," he said, his voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. "Tell him his Omega is under my protection now. Tell him the Shadowcrest pack is no longer disinterested in his borders." The threat hung in the air, tangible as a knife. Owen's grin faded. He took a step back, then another. The pack bond tugged at him fiercely now, the call to retreat and report. With one last, venomous look at me, a look that promised this wasn't over, he shifted. The sound was brutal, efficient. The crunch of bone, the rip of fabric, the wet slide of muscle reforming. In seconds, a large, gray wolf with storm cloud eyes stood in his place. It snarled once, then melted into the trees. And then it was just him and me. Vincent turned. The full force of his attention was a physical weight. He looked at me, really looked, his gaze sweeping from my tear-streaked face down to my grotesquely swollen ankle. The mate bond between us thrummed, a live wire of awareness. In his eyes, I saw no pity, no disgust, only a fierce, blazing intensity that stole the air from my lungs. "Can you stand?" he asked. His voice had changed. The threat was gone, replaced by something rougher, more intimate. I shook my head, mute. The pain, the shock, the earth-shattering revelation of his identity and our bond, it was all too much. He moved then, closing the distance between us in 2 strides. He didn't ask permission. He simply bent, one arm sliding behind my back, the other under my knees, and lifted me against his chest as if I weighed nothing. I gasped at the sudden movement, at the shock of contact. He was solid heat, and his scent, that smoke and amber and power, enveloped me completely. A low, involuntary sound of pure instinct escaped me. A whimper, but not of fear. Of recognition. His arms tightened around me just slightly. A rumble started deep in his chest, a pure, wolfish sound of satisfaction. Possession. "Mine!" He breathed into my hair, the word of vow and acclaim. He began to walk, carrying me away from Moonfall, away from everything I'd ever known. The forest changed around us, the trees growing thicker, older. The pack bond in my mind, the one linking me to Joseph and Owen and Josie, stretched. And then, with a faint, psychic ping, it severed. Just like that, I was cut adrift. "Where are you taking me?" My voice was a ragged whisper against his shirt. "Home," he said, the single word laden with meaning. Little did I know, his home was a court of shadows and exiles, that his title of king was both a crown and a curse, and that the bond now blazing between us was a target painted on my back. We emerged into a clearing where a sleek, black SUV waited, looking utterly out of place. A man leaned against it, younger than Vincent, with a watchful gaze and an air of relaxed lethality. His eyes, a warm brown, widened slightly as he saw Vincent carrying me. "Well," the man said, his voice laced with a dry humor that seemed to be his natural state. "The hunt was successful, I see. Brought back a souvenir." "Joseph, this is Ella," Vincent said, his tone brooking no commentary. "She's injured. We're leaving. Now." Joseph, the supporting character, not my former alpha, just nodded, smart enough not to question. He opened the back door. Vincent placed me on the seat with surprising gentleness, but as he moved to pull away, my hand shot out, fingers clutching his wrist. The contact sent a new jolt through the bond, a spark of something electric and deep. "Why?" I whispered, my eyes searching his golden ones. "Why would the moon goddess pair you with me?" His gaze held mine, fierce and unflinching. "The goddess doesn't make mistakes, Ella." He leaned in closer, his breath warm on my cheek. "But she does enjoy her tests. Your old pack saw a broken Omega." "I see." He paused, his eyes dropping to my lips for a heartbeat that made my pulse skyrocket. "I see a storm waiting to break." He pulled away, shutting the door. As Joseph slid into the driver's seat and the engine purred to life, I looked out the window. The moon, that baleful eye, watched us drive away. A deep, unsettling ache began in my bones, a crawling sensation under my skin. It was different from the pain of my ankle. It was a pressure, an unfurling. The first shift, it was coming. Tonight, the horror and ecstasy of it whispered through my blood. Vincent got in the passenger seat, filling the car with his presence. He didn't look back at me, but I saw his knuckles whiten where he gripped the dashboard. The mate bond trembled with a shared, rising tension. "Drive faster," Vincent growled, his voice thick with a strain I didn't yet understand. Joseph pressed the accelerator. The trees blurred past. The ache in my bones intensified, a deep, resonant thrum that matched the engine's roar. I curled into myself, a fresh terror rising, not of Owen, not of rejection, but of the monster waking up inside me. Vincent's voice cut through the haze of my panic, low and meant only for my ears through our new private bond. "Don't fight it, Ella. I've got you." But as a sharp, cracking pain lanced through my spine, making me cry out, a final, chilling thought crystallized. What happened next would change everything. I was heading into the heart of a rival pack as the fated mate of their king, with the moon forcing the wolf out of me for the very first time. And my former pack, led by a humiliated beta and a disappointed alpha, would be coming for me. The last thing I saw before the change truly began to take hold was Vincent watching me in the rearview mirror, his golden eyes blazing with a possessiveness that promised war, and a protectiveness that felt like my only anchor in the raging storm to come. The severed pack bond was a silent scream in her soul, a phantom limb ripped away. Ella trembled in Vincent's arms, the world reduced to the pounding of his heart against her ear, and the fading, furious snarls of Owen behind them. She was unmoored, adrift, his. Vincent did not slow. His stride was a relentless, ground-eating pace that spoke of intimate knowledge with the dark, frozen labyrinth. The trees seemed to part for him. The howling wind died to a whisper in his presence. Ella could only cling, her broken ankle a throbbing, distant agony compared to the seismic shift inside her. Fated mate. The words were a myth, a bedtime story for pups, not for broken Omegas. "Joseph!" Vincent's voice was a low rumble, not for her, but carrying through the woods. From a clearing just ahead, headlights flicked on, illuminating the falling snow in two brilliant cones. A sleek, black SUV idled, a shadow within shadows. A man leaned against the driver's side door, tall, sharp-featured, with watchful eyes that missed nothing. This was the other Joseph. As Vincent approached, the guard's gaze swept over Ella, noting her injury, her terror, her placement in his alpha's arms. His expression didn't change, but he gave a slight, respectful nod. "Sire, the perimeter is clear. Moonfall's scouts have been circling their edge, but they haven't crossed." His voice was cool, efficient. "They will," Vincent said, his tone leaving no room for doubt. He moved to the back passenger door, which Joseph swiftly opened. The interior was warm, smelling of leather and something faintly metallic. Vincent placed Ella on the seat with a care that contradicted everything she knew about alphas. He didn't let go immediately, his hand cradling the back of her head, his eyes searching hers. "The pain will get worse before it gets better. The shift is coming. You are safe now. Do you understand?" She could only manage a jerky nod, her throat sealed shut. Safe. She was in a car with two terrifying strangers, her pack bond was gone, and her body was threatening to tear itself apart. Safety was a concept she had no reference for. Vincent slid in beside her, a wall of heat and solid muscle. Joseph took the driver's seat, and the SUV pulled away with a soft purr, leaving the neutral woods and her old life swallowed by the night. The vehicle was a capsule of silence. Ella stared out the window at the blur of passing pines, her mind a whirlwind. What happened next changed everything. The thought was a desperate whisper. She had been property. Now she was what? A prize. A pawn in some larger game, between an alpha king and a petty pack alpha. "The ankle is a clean break," Vincent said, his voice cutting through her spiraling thoughts. He wasn't looking at her. He was staring ahead, his profile sharp in the dashboard lights. But the forced shift will mend it. Your body is fighting the change because it's been suppressed. You've been malnourished, weakened. It wasn't a question. Shame, hot and familiar, washed over her. I'm defective, she whispered, the old label a bitter pill. Vincent's head turned slowly. His gaze was like a physical weight. You are surviving. There is a difference. The defect was in your pack, not in you. The words were so foreign, so utterly revolutionary that Ella couldn't process them. She fell silent again, a fresh wave of pain radiating from her ankle up her leg. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. Joseph! Speed! Vincent commanded, his voice tight. The SUV accelerated smoothly. Joseph's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Moonfall has a single patrol tailing us at maximum range. They are observing, not engaging. Let them see which border we cross, Vincent said, a dark satisfaction in his tone. Let Alpha Joseph know exactly where to send his formal complaint. Ella's heart stuttered. Formal complaint. Vincent looked at her, and for the first time she saw something other than fierce possession in his eyes, a flicker of something like pity. He was your guardian. By our oldest laws, he has a right to demand an audience to question my claim. It is a formality, nothing more. But he'll come for me. The fear was instinctive, cold. He will try, Vincent conceded, his jaw tightening, and he will fail. The landscape began to change. The dense, wild forest gave way to older, taller trees, their branches interlaced like a cathedral roof. Strange, pale moss glowed faintly on ancient bark, lighting the road with an ethereal silver blue. The air itself felt different, heavier, charged. Ella pressed her forehead to the cool glass. Where are we? Shadow Crest territory, Vincent said. The court of shadows and exiles. The road wound upward. Through the trees, Ella began to see glimpses of stone, not crude walls, but sleek, dark granite that seemed to grow from the mountain itself. They passed under a massive, arched gateway, wrought iron depicting howling wolves and crescent moons. No guards were visible, but Ella felt the weight of unseen eyes. The SUV came to a stop in a vast, enclosed courtyard. Joseph exited and opened Ella's door. Before she could move, Vincent was there, lifting her again. The cold air hit her, but it was clean, scented with pine and frost. Before them stood the fortress. It wasn't a rustic pack house. It was a stronghold, modern and severe, all sharp angles and impenetrable windows reflecting the starless sky. This was a place of power. Vincent carried her through towering double doors into a grand entrance hall. The floor was polished dark stone. A huge, abstract sculpture of intertwined wolves dominated the space. Werewolves moved with quiet purpose, some in modern clothing, others in tactical gear. All stopped and dipped their heads or thumped a fist over their heart as Vincent passed. Their eyes widened slightly at the sight of the injured Omega in his arms, but not a single whisper broke the respectful silence. If only I had known, Ella thought, dazed. If only I had known the world was this big. Vincent took her through a labyrinth of corridors, finally shouldering open a door into a spacious suite. It was dominated by a large bed, but the room was sparse, masculine. A fire crackled in a hearth, casting dancing shadows. He placed her gently on the edge of the bed and knelt before her. Look at me, Ella. She forced her eyes to his. The mate bond was a live wire between them, humming with a tension that was part terror, part terrifying attraction. The shift is imminent. I can feel it fighting you. You must stop fighting back. Let it in. It will hurt, but I will be here. Your wolf knows me. It will not hurt you while I am here. His hands, so large and capable, carefully removed her tattered shoe. His touch on her swollen ankle was clinical, but it sent a shock of something entirely different through her system. A violent, wrenching spasm tore through her abdomen. Ella cried out, doubling over. Bones began to pop. Her skin prickled as if a million ants were crawling beneath it. "Vincent!" It was a plea. He stood, his presence enveloping her. "Now, Ella, let go." Agony erupted. It was a fire in her veins, a cracking, stretching, reforming. She heard a scream, raw and guttural, and didn't know it was her own. The world dissolved into sensation, the scrape of fur erupting from skin, the brutal realignment of her skeleton, the overwhelming flood of smell. Leather smoke, snow, pine, and him, Vincent. A scent of dark earth, storm wind, and absolute power. It was over in a cascade of pain, and then, sudden, shocking clarity. She was on the floor on all fours. She saw the world through different eyes, sharper, tinged with shades of gray. She felt the soft pelt of a wolf, her own. She was small, a sleek she-wolf with fur the color of winter ash. And before her, standing tall, was a massive, majestic black wolf. His eyes were the same piercing, knowing blue, the alpha king in his true form. He lowered his great head, nudging her gently. A wave of calm, of rightness, flowed from him to her through the bond. Her wolf, timid and scarred, recognized its mate. It whined softly and pressed its head against his neck. The connection was profound, wordless. In this form there were no lies, no past, only the truth of the bond. For a fleeting moment there was peace. A sharp, urgent knock shattered the moment. The black wolf's head snapped up, a low growl vibrating in the room. In a fluid, terrifying motion, he shifted back. Vincent stood, naked and utterly unself-conscious, his body a map of old scars and formidable strength. He grabbed a robe from a chair, tying it roughly as he strode to the door. Ella shifted back, the process less painful but leaving her disoriented and shivering on the fur rug. She scrambled for a blanket, pulling it around herself. Vincent opened the door a crack. Joseph's voice, tense, filtered in. "Sire, Moonfall's alpha, he's at the gate. He's brought his beta and a full contingent of warriors. He demands the return of his ward, immediately." Vincent's shoulders tensed. He looked back at Ella, huddled on the floor, her eyes wide with renewed dread. The peace was gone. "Tell Alpha Joseph," Vincent said, his voice dropping to a deadly, quiet tone that promised violence, "that he is welcome to enter my hall. Alone, to discuss the Omega he lost. But if a single one of his warriors sets foot over my threshold without my leave, they will be considered rogues and treated accordingly." He closed the door and turned to Ella. The firelight cast half his face in shadow. "Get dressed," he said, his voice softening only a fraction. "Wear this." He moved to a wardrobe, pulling out a simple, dark dress. "You will stand beside me. You will say nothing unless I direct you to. Do you understand?" Ella nodded, her fingers clutching the blanket. The man who had been her guardian, the source of all her conditional safety and profound disappointment, was here. In the stronghold of the wolf who had claimed her. Vincent crossed the room, crouching before her again. He cupped her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "You are Shadowcrest now. Your loyalty is to me. Your safety is my vow. Remember that when you see him. Remember who left you in the snow." He stood, leaving her trembling. As she fumbled into the dress, her mind raced. Alpha Joseph was here. Owen was here, just beyond the door. The fragile sense of safety Vincent had built shattered like thin ice. The confrontation she had fled was now waiting for her in the heart of the enemies. No, her mates. Court. Vincent, now dressed in black trousers and a simple shirt that did nothing to diminish his authority, offered her his hand. Her ankle, miraculously, was whole. The shift had healed it. She took his hand, his grip firm and warm. He led her out of the room, down the corridors, toward the grand hall. The sound of their footsteps echoed. As they approached a set of ornate doors, she could hear the murmur of many voices from within, the gathered members of Shadow Crest. Vincent paused, his hand on the door. He looked down at her, his blue eyes blazing with possessive certainty. "Ready?" he asked. But before she could answer, the doors were thrust open from the inside by two stern-faced guards. The hall fell silent. And there, in the center of the vast space, flanked by stone-faced Shadow Crest warriors, stood Alpha Joseph of Moonfall. His expression was a mask of paternal concern, but his eyes, when they landed on Ella, were chips of glacial ice. And just behind his shoulder, smirking with vicious anticipation, was Beta Owen. Alpha Joseph's gaze swept from Ella's hand in Vincent's to the new, undeniable mate mark that now graced her neck. His face paled, then darkened with a rage he could barely contain. "Ella, my child," he said, his voice dripping with wounded benevolence. "What have they done to you?" And Vincent's hand tightened around hers as the Alpha King prepared for war. The grand hall doors swung inward, and the cold, familiar scent of pine and arrogance hit Ella like a physical blow. If only I had known how deep the lie ran, she thought, her hand instinctively tightening on Vincent's arm. Alpha Joseph of Moonfall stood framed in the doorway, Beta Owen a hulking, hateful shadow at his shoulder. Owen's eyes, burning with humiliation and rage, locked onto her. But it was Alpha Joseph's face that stole the air from her lungs. He wore his disappointment like a crown. "Ella, child," he said, his voice a gentle, paternal baritone that had once been her only comfort. It was a sound that now made her wolf whimper inside her. He took a step forward, his gaze sweeping over her, over the mate mark visible at her throat, over the possessive, unyielding figure of the Alpha King beside her. His kind eyes, the color of weathered bark, held a profound sadness. "Look what they've done to you." The words were a masterstroke. They bypassed Vincent entirely, aimed straight at the orphan he'd raised. They implied coercion, corruption. Ella felt a tremor run through her. Vincent's hand covered hers where it rested on his arm, his touch a brand of solid reality. "What my mate has undergone is a blessing, Joseph," Vincent said, his voice neither loud nor harsh, but it carried to the far corners of the silent hall. "One your pack denied her. You approach my hall under my sufferance. Remember that." Alpha Joseph's sorrowful gaze finally lifted to Vincent. "I come for my ward who was taken from my protection. From neutral ground, Vincent. This is an act of war." "She was hunted on neutral ground," Vincent corrected, a lethal softness in his tone. "By your Beta. I claimed what was mine. The act of war was yours. The consequence is mine." Owen snarled, the sound echoing. "She is a defective, a reject. She is Moonfall property." What happened next changed everything. Vincent didn't move, but the pressure in the hall spiked, a crushing, primal weight that forced the air from Ella's chest. It was focused entirely on Owen. The Beta's knees buckled. He hit the stone floor with a grunt, his back bowing under the invisible force of an Alpha King's command. A whine, pure and animal, escaped his throat. "You will not speak of my queen," Vincent said, each word a chip of ice. Alpha Joseph flinched, his paternal mask slipping for a fraction of a second to reveal sheer, unadulterated fury beneath. It was gone in a blink, replaced by deeper concern. "Please, you see his brutality, Ella. This is not a life. Come home. We can fix this." His words slithered into her mind. Fix this. The rejection, the bond, the silent hope she'd clung to for years, that one day she would be enough for the pack that took her in, stirred painfully. "He took you in when you had nothing, Ella," Owen gritted out from the floor, straining against Vincent's will. "Is this your gratitude, aligning with rogues and exiles?" Rogues and exiles. The old shame, the Omega's shame, flushed through her. She felt the eyes of the Shadow Crest pack members lining the hall, watching, waiting. They were still, silent, utterly loyal. They bore scars, held themselves with a hardened grace she didn't understand. Were they like her? "Speak, Ella." Vincent's voice was low for her alone. His thumb stroked her wrist. "You are not on trial, you are declaring your allegiance. To him," he nodded toward Joseph, "or to me. To the past or to your future." Alpha Joseph took another step, his hands open, pleading. "You are confused, sweetheart. The forced bond, the trauma of the shift, it clouds your judgment. Come with me, we will protect you." The sound of the crackling fire in the great hearth was the only sound. Ella looked from Joseph's crafted concern to Owen's hatred, from the familiar pain of rejection to the terrifying, unknown solidity of the man beside her. His demand for loyalty was not a request. It was a line in the sand. Her wolf, timid and scarred, pushed an image into her mind. The black wolf curled around her, a wall of safety. A feeling, home. She took a shaky breath. "Alpha Joseph," she began, her voice small. She saw his eyes warm with anticipated victory. You took me in. I have always been grateful." He smiled, a sad, forgiving smile. "I know, child." "But," Ella continued, the word a fragile, breaking thing, "you let Owen hunt me, you called me a reject. You were going to give me to him." The memories tumbled out, sharp and clear. To fix me, as a prize for his loyalty. The revelation hung in the air, ugly and true. Alpha Joseph's smile froze. "Ella, that's not." "My name is Ella of Shadow Crest," she said, and the title felt foreign but fierce on her tongue. She straightened her spine, leaning into Vincent's strength. "My Alpha is Vincent. My home is here." Silence. Then Alpha Joseph of Moonfall's face changed. The kindly guardian vanished. In his place was a cold, calculating Alpha, his eyes sharp and devoid of all pretended warmth. The transformation was more terrifying than any shift. "I see," he said, his voice now flat and businesslike. "The defect is not just physical, it seems. It is moral, a flaw of character." Vincent's power released Owen, who staggered to his feet, chest heaving. "Then there is nothing more to discuss," Vincent said. "You have your answer. Leave my territory." "A formal challenge," Alpha Joseph said, ignoring Vincent. His eyes were on Ella. "For the unlawful taking of a pack member. The Moonfall Pack challenges the Shadow Crest Pack for the return of the Omega, Ella. Trial by combat. Beta to beta. Or," he added, a cruel twist to his lips, "do your exiles not honor the old ways?" A ripple went through the Shadow Crest warriors in the hall. Vincent went preternaturally still. "You would invoke a blood challenge for a wolf whose pack bond you severed the moment I claimed her." Vincent's question was deadly quiet. "Her bond to Moonfall was never formally severed by her Alpha. That is my right, and I exercise it now." Joseph's gaze was triumphant. He had found a thread, a technicality in their ancient laws, and he was pulling. "Unless your court is afraid of a fair fight." Ella's heart hammered against her ribs. A beta fight. Owen was a monster of muscle and malice. Who would Vincent have? The quiet guard, Joseph. Vincent finally smiled. It was a terrifying sight. "The challenge is accepted, but with a condition of my own. The fight is not beta to beta. It is champion to champion, and the stakes are higher. If Moonfall loses, you cede the northern quarter of your territory, including the silver mines, to Shadow Crest. Permanently." Now it was Alpha Joseph who paled. The northern mines were Moonfall's wealth. "And if we win?" "You get nothing," Vincent said simply, "because you will not win. But for the sake of formality, you may take Ella, a trophy for your beta as you always intended." Owen's grin was feral. He cracked his neck. "I accept." Alpha Joseph hesitated, weighing the immense risk. His eyes darted to Owen, then to the silent, deadly warriors of Shadow Crest. His greed and his fury warred. Greed won. He needed that legitimacy, that victory over the Alpha King to elevate his pack. Agreed. The challenge will be held at the next full moon, on the neutral grounds where this began. So be it, Vincent said. Now get out of my hall. Alpha Joseph gave a curt, mocking bow. His eyes swept over Ella one last time, no longer paternal but proprietary. Until the moon is full, defect. He turned, Owen casting a last, gloating sneer at Ella, and they strode from the hall, the doors booming shut behind them. The moment they were gone, the held breath of the pack released. Vincent's stern expression didn't change. "Joseph," he said, and his guard stepped forward. "You are my champion." The guard, Joseph, merely nodded. "Yes, my king. Owen is a butcher, not a fighter. He relies on cruelty and strength. You will dismantle him." It was an order, not a prediction. It will be done. Vincent finally looked down at Ella. She was trembling, the full weight of the confrontation crashing down on her. A formal challenge, a fight to the death for her. "Come," he said, his voice gentler. "The audience is over." He led her not back to his suite, but through a different corridor, deeper into the granite heart of the fortress. The sounds of the hall faded, replaced by the whisper of air through ancient stone and the distant drip of water. The air grew cooler. "I've made it worse," she whispered, despair clawing at her. "I've started a war." "The war was always coming," Vincent replied, stopping before a heavy, unadorned door made of dark ironwood. He was looking for a pretext. You were it. He pushed the door open. The room beyond was not a living space. It was an archive, a training room, and a shrine all in one. Walls were lined with books and scrolls. Weapons rested on racks. And in the center, on a stone dais, was a massive, ancient tapestry depicting a colossal black wolf under a crescent moon, surrounded by a court of diverse, fierce-looking wolves. "This is our history," Vincent said, guiding her inside. "The history of the Shadow Crest. We are not rogues. We are the keepers of the old blood, the judges of the unworthy. The packs, you know, like Moonfall, they have grown soft, corrupt. They hoard power and purity, breeding out what they fear." He turned her to face him. "You were not a defect to me, Ella. You were a spark in the darkness, a suppressed power. Your wolf is small and scarred because it was starved and beaten, not because it is weak." His words were a balm and a shock. What am I?" "That," he said, a fierce pride in his eyes, "is what we must discover before the full moon. Because Joseph is not just fighting for territory. He is fighting to prove his way is right. That wolves like you, and like every wolf in this fortress, are mistakes." He cupped her face. "You declared your allegiance. Now you must become it. You must learn to stand, not just beside me, but for yourself. Owen will try to kill Joseph. And if he succeeds," Vincent's jaw tightened, "Moonfall will claim you. There will be no second chances." A cold dread, deeper than any she'd felt before, settled in her bones. This was no longer just about escape. It was about survival in a world where her very existence was a battleground. "What do I do?" Her voice was a thread of sound. "You train," a new voice said from the doorway. Ella turned. A woman stood there, tall and wiry, her hair a shock of silver against her dark leathers. Her face was a map of fine scars, and her eyes, a piercing mercury gray, held a lifetime of harsh wisdom. She moved with a lethal, silent grace. "This is Lyra," Vincent said. "My head of security and the most lethal fighter in my pack. She will be your tutor." Lyra assessed Ella with a look that felt like an X-ray. "Broken ankles healed. Good. The wolf is timid. Not good. We have less than 3 weeks to connect you to her, to find your strength, and to make sure you don't freeze when the blood starts flying." She walked forward, stopping a foot away. "The Alpha King sees your potential. I see a liability. Prove him right, or prove me right, your choice." The challenge was stark, devoid of false comfort. Ella looked from Lyra's hardened face to Vincent's expectant one. The path ahead was clear: pain, fear, and brutal transformation. "Where do we start?" Ella asked, squaring her shoulders. Lyra's lips quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. "We start by unlearning everything Moonfall taught you. We start by letting your wolf out and letting her get angry." Lyra led her to the center of the room near the tapestry. "Shift," panic fluttered. "Here, now. The enemy is not at the gates, girl. He's in your head. Shift." Ella closed her eyes, reaching for the timid, ash-colored wolf. The shift was easier this time, less painful, a swift, shuddering flow of muscle and bone. She stood on 4 paws, small in the vast room. Lyra circled her. "Moonfall told you to be small, to be quiet, to take the abuse. Your wolf knows that's wrong. She's furious about it. Find that fury." Ella's wolf whined, confused. She felt only fear. Vincent, watching from the doorway, spoke softly. "Remember the clearing. Remember Owen's hand on your neck. Remember the word defect." The memory surged: Owen's grip, his hot breath, the certain knowledge of her own death. A spark ignited in her core. A low, unfamiliar rumble started in her chest. "Good," Lyra murmured. "Now hold it." The door to the archives burst open. Joseph, the guard, stood there, his usual composure gone. "My king, a report from the border patrol." Vincent's attention snapped to him. "Speak." Joseph's eyes flicked to Ella, then back. "Moonfall did not return directly to their territory. They circled south. The patrol tracked them to the Howling Crag Pack lands." Vincent went very still. "The Howling Crag," he repeated, the name a curse. "Alpha Kieran," Lyra hissed, a sharp intake of breath. "He's allying with the Crag. That's not possible. Kieran hates all structured packs." "Not an alliance," Joseph said, his face grim. "A transaction. The patrol intercepted a scout. The message was clear. Alpha Joseph of Moonfall has offered a bounty, not for Ella's return." He locked eyes with Vincent. "For her corpse. Delivered before the full moon. Kieran has accepted." The world dropped out from under Ella. Her nascent fury snuffed out, replaced by a void of pure, unadulterated terror. Lyra's words echoed in her mind, now a horrifying prophecy. The enemy is not at the gates. Vincent's roar of rage shook the very stones of the fortress. But all Ella could hear was the silent, hunting promise in the air. The Howling Crag were not just rogues. They were boogamen, mercenaries of the wild places, and they were coming for her. Now. The words hung in the air of the archives, cold and sharp as a blade. "Alpha Kieran. Howling Crag. A bounty on my life." The training room, which had felt like a sanctuary of dusty history and potential just moments before, now felt like a cage with its door wide open to predators. Lyra's scarred face showed no surprise, only a grim tightening around her eyes. "Mercenaries," she spat, the word tasting foul. "Kieran has no honor, only greed. He'll use any tactic. Poison, traps, a sniper's rifle from a mile away. This changes the training schedule." Vincent's growl was a subsonic vibration that made the ancient weapons on the walls hum. "He's made a fatal error, hiring outsiders to violate a formal challenge. Joseph has shown his true cowardice to every pack that hears of it." He turned his molten gaze to Ella. The fear she felt was a live wire in her chest, but beneath it, a new, colder current stirred. Her wolf, not timid now, but bristling with a sense of violation. "You will not leave this fortress. Not for air, not for a run, not until the duel." "I'm a prisoner," the words left her before she could stop them. "You are alive," Vincent corrected, his voice leaving no room for argument. "And you will stay that way. Lyra, you have 2 weeks until the full moon. Make her wolf more than a passenger. Make it a weapon. I don't care if you have to break every bone in her body to do it. Heal her." Lyra gave a single, sharp nod. Understood, my king. If only I had known then that breaking bones would be the easiest part of what was to come. The next days blurred into a cycle of pain, exhaustion, and fleeting, hard-won clarity. The archives became a crucible. Lyra was a relentless force, a sculptor working with crude, stubborn material. Your wolf knows how to fight, Lyra barked, as Ella lay panting on the mat after another failed attempt to block a strike. You are the one getting in the way. Your fear, your human thoughts, they are a wall. Tear it down. I'm trying, Ella gasped, tasting blood from a split lip. Try harder, or Kieran's assassins will kill you, and then my alpha will kill me for failing. I prefer you alive. It was the closest thing to motivation Lyra offered. The breakthrough came not during combat drills, but in the silent, pre-dawn hours. Unable to sleep, Ella found herself before the massive pack tapestry. Her fingers traced the threads of the newest edition, a stark, silver-gray wolf with eyes of hazel, woven beside the immense, shadow-black form of the Alpha King. Ella of Shadow Crest. Her name was here in the history of her new pack. She belonged. A low, warm voice spoke from the doorway. It accepts you. She didn't jump. She was learning the feel of him, the subtle shift in the air when Vincent was near. It's just thread. It is blood, it is memory, it is promise. He came to stand beside her, a towering presence of restrained power. He didn't touch her, but the mate bond between them thrummed, a constant, quiet chord. Your wolf sees it. You should listen to her more often. She's angry, Ella confessed, the admission feeling dangerous. At Owen, at Joseph, at the Bounty, I've never felt anger like that. It scares me. Vincent finally looked at her, his gaze piercing. Good, fear your own rage, respect it. It is the fuel. But let your wolf wield the flame. She will not burn you. She is you. He reached out, his thumb brushing the fading bruise on her jaw from Lyra's training. The contact sent a jolt through her system, part comfort, part electric charge. Tomorrow you shift with me, in the mountains behind the fortress. It is time. The following afternoon, under a slate-gray sky, they stood on a wind-swept ledge high above the fortress. The world was vast and silent. Here, Vincent was not just the Alpha King in a hall, he was the apex predator in his domain. The shift is not a change, he instructed, his voice carried away by the wind. It is an unveiling. You are not becoming something else. You are revealing what has always been there. Let her out, Ella. She closed her eyes, reaching inward. Before, it had been a chaotic struggle. Now she sought the thread of that cold, clear anger she'd confessed to. She found the wolf, not cowering, but pacing, powerful muscles coiled, hazel eyes gleaming with intent. Mine, the wolf thought, the concept primal and encompassing. My mate, my pack, my life. The shift was not painless, but it was different. It was not a breaking, but a flowing. Bones realigned with a series of swift, sure clicks. Muscle and sinew expanded, fur erupted like silvered shadow from her skin. It took seconds. Where Ella had stood, now stood a sleek, powerful she-wolf, her coat the color of moonlit ash, her eyes the same intelligent hazel. Vincent's shift was a silent explosion of darkness. One moment a man, the next, a colossal black wolf, his presence dominating the very air. He chuffed, a warm sound of approval, and nudged her shoulder with his massive head. Then he ran. It was not a hunt, it was a celebration. Ella's wolf needed no guidance. Her paws found the rugged earth, her muscles propelled her after the shadow-black form ahead. The wind streamed through her fur, carrying 1,000 scents, pine, snow, stone, prey. The world was not just seen but felt, in vibrations through the ground, in currents of air. She was fast. She was strong. She was free. They ran until the sun dipped below the peaks, painting the sky in fiery streaks. As they trotted back toward the fortress, side by side, a new understanding settled in Ella's heart. This was not just survival. This was living. This was what Owen and Joseph had tried to steal from her. What happened next changed everything. They entered the grand hall through a side entrance, both back in human form, dressed in the simple clothes left for them. The hall was not empty. Joseph, the guard, stood at attention, his expression grave. Lyra was with him, a data tablet in her hand, her mouth a thin line. Vincent's relaxed posture from the run vanished instantly, replaced by the rigid authority of the king. Report. Lyra's eyes flicked to Ella, then back. A perimeter scout, South Ridge. He's alive, but only just. He managed to get a message out before they caught him. Howling Crag, Vincent's voice was deadly soft. Confirmed. Their stink is all over the report. They're probing the border, testing our defenses. The scout said they were asking about the Omega's routines. Lyra's jaw tightened. They know about the training in the archives. They know she doesn't leave. A chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air seeped into Ella's bones. They were watching, planning. Vincent turned to Joseph. The duel, your focus. Joseph's smile was a cold, sharp thing. Unchanged, my king. Owen is a brute. Strong, fast, but he thinks with his rage. I will use it against him. The Howling Crag is a distraction. They want us to look away from the main fight. A costly distraction if they succeed, Lyra countered. They won't. Vincent's declaration was final. Double the guard on the archives and this hall. No one enters without my direct seal. Lyra, you stay with her every moment. The next 2 days were claustrophobic. The archives felt less like a training ground and more like a bunker. Lyra intensified the drills, but the air was thick with a new tension. Every distant sound, a door closing, a shout from the courtyard, made Ella's wolf snarl internally. On the 3rd night, the attack came. It was not a frontal assault. It was a whisper, a betrayal of the air itself. Ella was attempting to meditate, to find the calm center Lyra insisted was necessary for control, when the scent hit her. It was faint, masked by the smell of old paper, oiled metal, and stone. But her wolf caught it, a cloying, sweet chemical odor, utterly foreign to the fortress. Gas. Her eyes flew open. Lyra was across the room, inspecting a throwing knife, her back to the ancient ventilation grate high on the wall. A barely visible, colorless haze was seeping from it. Lyra! Ella choked out, scrambling to her feet. Her head already felt light, a fuzzy numbness creeping into her limbs. Lyra spun, her eyes widening as she saw the haze, then immediately clamped a hand over her own nose and mouth. Vent attack, she snarled, her voice muffled. She lunged for the main door, yanking it open to shout an alarm into the corridor. Breach, archives, neurotoxin. But the corridor was empty. The usual guards were gone. The lights flickered. This wasn't just a probe. This was a meticulously planned inside job. Lyra slammed the door shut, sealing them in with the poison. The grate, she yelled, pointing. We need to block it. Ella's vision swam. Her wolf was howling inside, a sound of panic and fury. She stumbled toward the wall, grabbing a thick, heavy tome from a shelf. The world tilted. She could hear shouts now, distant, muffled, the sounds of conflict elsewhere in the fortress. A diversion. With the last of her strength, she hurled the book. It struck the grate with a clang, knocking it askew and slowing the flow. It wasn't enough. The gas was already thick in the room. Lyra was on her knees, fighting to stay conscious, fumbling for her radio. It was dead, jammed. Ella sank to the floor, the cold stone against her cheek. This was it. Not a glorious fight, but a silent, sneaking murder in a locked room. The cruel, pragmatic death Alpha Kieran was known for. Despair washed over her. Then, through the bond, a torrent of pure, incandescent fury. It was Vincent. He was coming, a storm of wrath breaking through the fortress. but he was too far away. No, the thought was not hers alone. It was her wolf's, a snarl that cut through the chemical fog in her mind. Mine, my life, my fight. The shift took her, not with a flow, but with a violent, desperate surge. As the silver-gray wolf shook itself free of human clothes, its lungs, more resilient, filtered the toxin. It was still weakening, but it could move. The wolf lunged for the main door, throwing its weight against the reinforced metal. It didn't budge. It turned, hazel eyes landing on the older wooden servant's door behind Lyra's desk, a detail she'd noted in her first days, forgotten until now. She shifted back, the effort wrenching a cry from her human throat. Naked, gasping, she crawled to the desk, her fingers fumbling for the hidden latch Lyra had once shown her. "Through here," she rasped to Lyra. The combat tutor, using sheer will, dragged herself over. Together, they released the latch and tumbled through the narrow door into a dark, dusty service passage, just as the main doors to the archives exploded inward. Vincent stood in the shattered doorway, a vision of apocalyptic rage, his eyes pure black, claws extended. He took in the gas-filled room, the blocked grate, the absence of bodies. His gaze snapped to the open servant's door. Ella, from the darkness of the passage, met his eyes. Alive, terrified, but alive. The relief on his face was instantaneous and profound, but it was swallowed a second later by a king's cold wrath. He had an intruder to find. The fortress was in an uproar. The Howling Crag team, a small, elite unit, had infiltrated using a stolen access code and a sophisticated jamming field. They were cornered and eliminated in the lower levels, but not before they'd revealed the source of the breach. Vincent stood in his war room, the evidence before him. A dead Howling Crag mercenaries communicator with a single encrypted log. Decoded, it showed a brief, damning data transfer. The schematics of the fortress ventilation system, sent not from Moonfall territory, but from a device registered to the Moonfall Pack's own communications network. Beta Owens, Joseph hadn't just hired mercenaries. He had given them the keys. His beta had directly facilitated an assassination attempt on foreign soil, violating every law of challenge and territory. Vincent's voice, when he spoke to the assembled guards and to Ella, who stood wrapped in a blanket beside a silent, furious Lyra, was like the calm before an avalanche. The challenge is void. This is no longer a duel for territory. He lifted the communicator, his knuckles white. This is an act of war, and Moonfall has just declared it. He looked at Ella, his eyes holding a promise of storms and blood. Prepare. We march for the Moonfall border at dawn. Not for a duel, for a reckoning. But as the orders were given and the fortress mobilized for war, a final, chilling report came from the southern watchtower. A large force, not Moonfall, was gathering in the neutral woods. Their banners were crude, stitched with jagged crags and bloody fangs. The Howling Crag Pack was not retreating. Alpha Kieran, his bounty unclaimed, was bringing his entire mercenary horde to the doorstep of Shadow Crest, sensing the chaos, ready to scavenge the spoils. Ella stood at the window of the now heavily guarded archives, watching the fortress lights blaze against the night. To the north, her former pack, led by a traitorous Alpha and his vicious Beta. To the south, an army of mercenaries hired to kill her. And in the middle, the Shadow Crest, bound to protect her, poised on the knife's edge of a two-front war. The full moon was in 3 days. It would not illuminate a ceremonial duel. It would shine down on a battlefield. The war room's silence was a physical thing, thick and cold. The report from the southern watchtower still hung in the air between them. The entire Howling Crag force, amassed and waiting. A two-front war. Vincent's knuckles were white where they rested on the strategic map. If only I had known the depth of Joseph's hatred, Ella thought, her own breath shallow. He didn't just want me back. He wants me erased, and he'll burn every border to ash to do it. They're a distraction. Vincent's voice cut the silence, low and certain. He didn't look up from the map. Lyra, standing rigid at his side, her scars pale in the low light, tilted her head. The Howling Crag, a mercenary army at your southern gate, is hardly a feint, my king. It is, he insisted, his finger tracing a line from the southern border back to the neutral woods that abutted Moonfall's territory. Kieran hates structured packs, but he's a pragmatist. A direct siege against a fortress like this. He'd lose half his forces before he breached the outer wall. No, he's flashy, loud, he's the spectacle. His gaze lifted, finding Ella's. The gold in his eyes was molten. Moonfall is the dagger. Joseph is counting on us looking south, while Owen slips the real blade between our ribs. The logic was cold and precise. It settled in Ella's stomach like a stone. The formal challenge was voided. He has no right to send a champion onto your lands. He doesn't care about rights. Joseph, the guard, spoke from the doorway, his arms crossed. His voice was grim. He cares about results. The duel was a clean way to get what he wanted. This is scorched earth. He's hired the flashy brawler to draw our gaze, so his own knife can finish the job he started in the archives. A chill, deeper than the mountain stone, seeped into Ella's bones. She remembered Owen's face in the grand hall, humiliated, venomous. He wouldn't come for territory, he'd come for her. He'll use the chaos. The full moon is in 2 nights. When everyone is heightened, distracted. Vincent gave a single, sharp nod. That's his window. The Howling Crag will probe, they'll skirmish, they'll make noise. And under that cover, a Moonfall strike team, likely led by Owen himself, will infiltrate. Their objective won't be to take the fortress. It will be a single, surgical kill. His eyes locked on hers. No fear, just a terrifying, absolute certainty. What happened next changed everything. It wasn't fear that rose in Ella then. It was a slow, simmering fury. It was her wolf, awake and bristling under her skin, not in panic but in defiance. They had hunted her, rejected her, sold her death to mercenaries, and now they sought to turn her new home into a battlefield just to mop up their mistake. The timid Omega was ash. What remained was something else. No, Ella said. The word wasn't loud, but it rang in the stone room. Vincent's brow lifted. Lyra watched her, a new, assessing glint in her eye. No, Ella repeated, stepping forward to the map table. She placed her hands on the cool surface beside Vincent's. I am not a liability to be guarded. I am not a prize to be stolen or a mistake to be erased. She met Vincent's gaze, her own blazing. You claimed me as your fated mate, as your equal, so let me be that. Don't just plan to defend me, use me. A slow, dangerous smile touched Vincent's lips. What are you suggesting? Her mind, once a fog of dread, was now frighteningly clear. It was strategy, seen from the bottom looking up. She knew how Owen thought. She knew the shortcuts, the contempt, the arrogance. He expects me to be hidden away in the deepest, most guarded room. He expects your forces to be split, looking outward at the big, scary army. So we don't hide me. We dangle me. Lyra hissed. That is a profoundly stupid risk. It's a calculated one, Ella countered, her voice steady. We choose the ground. Somewhere that looks vulnerable but isn't. Somewhere inside the territory but not the fortress itself. We let their scouts or their magic, or whatever they're using, catch a whisper of my location. Owen's pride won't let him ignore it. He'll see it as his chance to redeem himself in Joseph's eyes. He'll come for me himself. And when he does, she looked at Joseph, the guard. He's your champion. The duel he wanted is still waiting for him, just not on his terms. Silence stretched. The only sound was the low hum of the fortress's generators, a distant, electric heartbeat. Vincent stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to his beta. Joseph, can you take him? The guard's smile was a flash of white teeth. On a fair field, yes. In the dark, on his terms, it's messier. On our chosen ground, I will gut him and hang his pelt from the gate. Vincent nodded, then looked back at Ella. The pride in his eyes was a tangible warmth. Then we prepare our welcome, the clearing, where I first brought you across the border. It's close enough to the neutral woods for them to risk it, far enough inside our lines that they'll be surrounded the moment they commit. It's open, but the tree line is thick with our best hunters. He began pointing, his voice taking on the cadence of command. Lyra, you are Ella's shadow. Your only objective is her survival. You do not engage the main force unless her life is in immediate peril. Understood. Lyra's jaw tightened, but she dipped her head. Understood. Joseph, you pick your team. 5 others. You are the anvil. You wait in the clearing with Ella. The rest of the pack, he said, his hand sweeping over the map, will be the hammer. When Moonfall's strike team is fully committed in the clearing, we seal the trap. The howling crag at the southern gate will find our walls manned and ready. They are not to be engaged beyond holding the line. This ends with Moonfall. The plan crystallized, brutal and elegant. For the next 36 hours, the fortress was a hive of silent, purposeful activity. The air tasted of oil, steel, and tension. Ella trained with Lyra, but now it was different. Not learning to fight, but learning the specific dance of the trap. When to run, where to stand, how to be the perfect, tantalizing bait. The night of the full moon arrived, heavy and electric. The silver light bled through the high windows, setting Ella's nerves singing. Her wolf was close to the surface, not with fear, but with a fierce, eager anticipation. She stood in the grand hall, dressed in simple, dark clothes, as Vincent addressed his pack. They were a sea of focused faces, their loyalty to him, and now, to her, a palpable force. Tonight, we do not just defend our borders, Vincent's voice echoed, filling the space. We defend the very idea of our pack, that a wolf is not defined by the rank they are born into, but by the strength of their heart and the loyalty in their blood. Moonfall has chosen war. They have brought hired knives to our home. So tonight we answer, not as victims but as judges. A low, unified growl of approval rippled through the crowd. Vincent's eyes found Ella's. Take your positions for Shadow Crest. The pack moved like a single organism, flowing out into the night. Ella, with Lyra and Joseph's 6-wolf team, descended the mountain not in vehicles, but on foot, moving with the silent grace of their wolves through the shadowed pine forests. The clearing, bathed in brilliant moonlight, looked deceptively peaceful. This was it, the place where her old life had ended and this terrifying new one had begun. The air was cold and clean, smelling of pine and frozen earth. Ella stood in the center, feeling exposed. Lyra melted into the shadows at the tree line to the east. Joseph and his team, all in their human forms but armed with silver-kissed blades, stood in a loose circle around her, a visible guard that was just weak enough to look tempting. They waited. The sounds of the distant skirmish began to drift from the south, the faint, angry snarls of wolves, the sharp reports of specialized firearms. The howling crag was making its move. The distraction had begun. Ella's heart hammered against her ribs. Come on, she thought, calling to the ghost of the girl who had cowered from Owen. You wanted me. Here I am. As if summoned by her thought, the shadows at the western tree line stirred. They emerged silently. 8 large, gray-furred wolves, their eyes glinting like chips of dirty ice in the moonlight. At their head was a massive, brindled beast with a familiar, arrogant lift to its head. Owen. The strike team fanned out, entering the clearing. Owen shifted mid-stride, his human form coalescing from the wolf. He stood naked and unashamed, his gaze sweeping over Joseph's team with contempt before landing on Ella. "The defective little Omega," he sneered, his voice cutting through the night. "Playing soldier with her new friends. Did you really think a few guards would be enough?" Ella said nothing. She held his gaze, letting him see no fear, only a cold, waiting stillness. Owen's smile widened. He took another step forward. "Joseph is a fool. He sends his king's whore out as bait. Or are you just too much of a coward to die behind stone walls?" Joseph, the guard, stepped forward, drawing his long, wicked blade. The moonlight ran down its edge like liquid silver. "The challenge was issued, Owen. You wanted a duel, you have one. Just not with the Alpha King, you get me." Owen's laughter was a harsh bark. "The driver, this is the best Shadow Crest has for a champion," he gestured, and his 7 wolves shifted into human forms, drawing their own weapons. "Kill the guards. The Omega is mine." The trap snapped shut. From the surrounding forest, shadows detached themselves. Dozens of them. Silent, disciplined Shadow Crest wolves emerged from every direction, encircling the clearing completely. Vincent stood at the forefront, having shifted to his human form, a figure of absolute authority clad in black. The Moonfall Strike team whirled, their confidence shattering into panic. They were not hunters. They were prey. "Oh, you are trespassing on sovereign territory with intent to assassinate my mate," Vincent's voice boomed, devoid of all mercy. "The formalities are over, Beta. This is an execution." Chaos erupted. The Moonfall wolves, outnumbered 3-1, fought with the desperate fury of cornered animals. The clearing became a whirl of snarls, clashing steel, and the sharp, coppery scent of blood. Joseph engaged Owen, their blades meeting with a shriek of metal that echoed Ella's own heightened senses. She watched, her body thrumming. Lyra remained a protective presence at her side, dispatching a Moonfall wolf who lunged too close with brutal, efficient grace. But Ella's focus was on Owen. She saw the moment he realized he was outmatched. Joseph was a storm of controlled violence, his every move economical and lethal. Owen was stronger, perhaps, but he was reckless, fueled by rage. With a desperate roar, Owen feinted left and broke away from Joseph, his eyes, wild and insane, locking on Ella. He charged, not with a weapon but with claws extended, aiming to tear her apart where she stood. "Ella!" Vincent's shout was a raw thing. But Ella didn't need his warning. The world slowed. The sounds of battle faded. There was only the wolf charging her, the embodiment of every cruel word, every moment of terror. And the other wolf inside her, the one she had forged a partnership with, rose up in a wave of pure, protective fury. She didn't try to stop the shift. She commanded it. Bone, muscle, and sinew realigned in a surge of power that was now familiar, now hers. Her clothes tore away as tawny fur erupted over her skin. Her snout elongated, her senses exploding into hyperclarity. She met Owen's charge not as a human, but as a wolf. Her form sleek, powerful, and faster than he anticipated. She ducked under his slashing claws and slammed her shoulder into his ribs, knocking him off course. He stumbled, shock widening his eyes. The defective Omega. Shifting, fighting, he snarled, pivoting. "I'll kill you in either skin." He lunged again. This time Ella didn't dodge. She met him. Claws raked her flank, fire searing along her side, but her jaws found his forearm. She bit down, tasting blood and bone. He howled, trying to shake her off. She held on, her weight dragging him down. They rolled in the frozen grass, a tangle of fury and snapping teeth. From the corner of her eye, she saw Joseph, held back by Vincent's raised hand. This was her fight. Her pack surrounded them, a wall of silent, deadly support. Owen, enraged and bleeding, managed to throw her off. He loomed over her. his jaws dripping saliva and blood, poised for a killing bite to her throat. Ella went still. She let a whimper escape, the sound of the old Ella, the broken one. Owen's eyes gleamed with triumph. It was his last mistake. As he committed, driving down, Ella twisted with every ounce of strength her wolf possessed. His jaws snapped shut on empty air where her neck had been. And her own jaws, fueled by a lifetime of suppressed rage and a newfound, ferocious love for her pack, found his throat. She bit down. The crunch of cartilage and bone was loud in the sudden quiet. The fight around them had stopped. Owen's body went rigid, then limp. A final, wet gurgle escaped him. His eyes, wide with disbelief, glazed over. Ella released him, backing away, shifting back to her human form in a rush. She stood, naked and shivering, his blood, streaking her chin and chest. The wound on her flank burned, but it was shallow. She looked from Owen's lifeless form to Vincent. He was staring at her, his expression one of awe and fierce, unadulterated pride. The remaining Moonfall wolves, seeing their leader dead, dropped their weapons, surrendering. Vincent walked to her, stripping off his own jacket and wrapping it around her shoulders. The warmth and his scent enveloped her. He didn't say, "Well done." He simply rested his forehead against hers, their breath mingling in the cold air, the bond between them singing a note of perfect, resonant harmony. "The howling crag force is breaking off," a warrior reported, jogging up. "They've lost their paymaster. They're retreating south." Vincent nodded, his eyes never leaving Ella's. "Send a message to Moonfall," he said, his voice carrying to every wolf present. "Deliver their beta's body to their gate. Tell Alpha Joseph the debt is paid. The war is over. If he ever looks toward Shadow Crest again, we will not stop at his beta. We will tear down his house, stone by stone, and salt the earth where it stood." It was over. The return to the fortress was not a march, but a procession. Ella, walking beside Vincent, was no longer just a claimed mate. She was the wolf who had defended her pack, who had met her tormentor in the moonlight and ended him. The looks from the Shadow Crest wolves were no longer of pity or cautious acceptance, but of deep, earned respect. Weeks later, the fortress felt different, lighter. The southern border was quiet. Moonfall had accepted the return of Owen's body in a silence that spoke of utter defeat. Alpha Joseph's reign, built on cruelty and calculation, was crumbling from within, his pack's loyalty fractured. Ella stood with Vincent on the high mountain ledge, the wind tugging at her hair. Her ankle was a memory. The scar on her flank was a badge. Below them, their territory stretched out, strong and secure. "You are not an Omega here," Vincent said quietly, his arm around her. "You never were. You are my Luna, my equal, my heart." Ella leaned into him, the words settling into a truth she finally believed. She had accepted Owen's rejection long ago. In doing so, she had made space to accept Vincent's claim, her own wolf, and the fierce, unshakable belonging of a pack that was now, irrevocably, hers. The silence that fell now was not one of dread, but of peace. And the Alpha King, who had shattered the night he found her, was whole, standing united with his queen under the endless, watchful moon.